Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our next road test. And today we're very happy to be joined by Stephen Pike, a Managing Director at HGEM. Stephen, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And you?
Yeah, good. It's a pleasure to see you. And normally I would say I haven't seen you for a while, but we did see you quite recently. We saw you at the service event.
We did. Yes. Brilliant event it was too. Looking forward to next year. You got that lined up already?
Yeah, we're booked in, ready to go. So the madness continues. So another year coming up. But today we're talking all about HGEM, which I've known you guys for a while, and I'm a Southwest boy, so I live up in South Wales. And, if anyone who doesn't know, HGEM are based in Bath, and lovely office down there in a beautiful part of the world. So tell us a little bit about you and HGEM before we kick off.
So, I suppose I've been involved for my sins now for about 16 years now, which has gone just like that, as you can imagine. And I suppose the idea started about 20 years ago. So that's how long the business has been around. And our purpose really is about empowering hospitality. That's how we describe it anyway. And as you know, Chris, it's an endlessly creative and entrepreneurial industry, and you've got lots of people out there that are trying all sorts of different things. You've got lots of successes, but you've also got a certain amount of failure as well. And part of what we try to do is to improve the odds. And success is not an accident, is it?
No.
So what we're trying to do is to help people to learn from the experiences of their guests, to improve what they do, and to grow, whatever that means to you, whether it means growing revenue or growing your estate size. And what we call that is guest experience management, or GEM. That's where the GEM in HGEM comes from, in case you haven't worked that one out.
I got you.
But yeah, we've seen lots of competitors come and go over the years, and there are some companies that are very good at guest experience reporting. What we try and do is put that M on there and look at the management of the reports that you get back, so that you're continually improving. So yeah, that's what we aim to do.
And I'm a previous customer, right? I mean, I'm going a bit way back to my age, but it proves how long HGEM have been around for. But I was using Mystery Diners in Coluccio's, Prime Minister, I think maybe Hard Rock Cafe as well. I can't remember, but it was
Hard Rock, yeah.
Many times.
Very good questionnaire. I remember that one.
And I always say to you, it was the most talked about piece of kit we had, because it was the most personal to the managers, particularly because it really impacted not just the GM of the site or the area manager or the ops director. It impacted the waiters and the chefs and everyone on the ground as well. So I always found it quite an interesting piece of kit, because the feedback was taken, and everyone takes. Someone told me feedback was a gift. Not always the time. Depends on the
That's right. You've got to be in the right mindset for it, haven't you?
But I can tell you, and I'm sure many operators who listen to this would say, if you get 100% HGEM audit, Mr. Diner, it is genuinely one of the best feelings you have in your career when you're running restaurants, because it lifts everybody for days. It really does. It's a I don't know if you guys ever experienced that, but it's, for us on the ground, to get 100% audit is absolutely magical, and vice versa, to get a 28% audit has the opposite effect.
It does. It inspires.
But we learn from it. But no, really great product, and I've thoroughly enjoyed using it over the years, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can see today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, shall I share my screen and we can?
Yes. Let me add it to the screen. I've removed our faces, Stephen. No offense.
No problem. People don't want to watch half an hour of that, do they? Okay. So let's start. We'll start with the website, just to give us a little bit of context, and then we'll kind of dive straight into the platform there. So we've talked about guest experience management and what that is, but of course, mystery dining is where it started. But these days we get data from all sorts of different sources: reviews, surveys, deliveries, etc., etc. And what we're looking to do with our clients, we'll just quickly touch on here, driving business growth through three main approaches. One is getting more customers in the first place. So to do that, we want to look at capturing and learning from feedback, actively responding to it, so that we're driving up the sort of reviews that you're getting higher ratings. But those people that you have got coming in, is to do more of the things that keep them loyal, to keep them coming back, to drive up the recommendations. And to do that, we look at examining NPS, looking at sentiment, looking at menu, how you're managing complaints, and so on. And the third thing is to make sure that your intended experience is being delivered as you intend it, time after time, consistently. And that means engaging more with the team, making sure they've got ownership over what they're doing, and looking at how they're motivating. So those are the three kind of things that that we're looking at here. So if we just have a little look, just before we go off into the platform, we're going to look at who we help. This might take you back a little bit, Chris. So operations and marketing, these are kind of two of our key personas. Often operate in two kind of bubbles, don't they? They're often a little bit siloed.
Yeah,
what we're trying to do is to
service.
Pardon?
That we talked about that at service on the marketing panel, how operations and
Yeah.
marketing can sit apart sometimes. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, they do, and what we're trying to do is really kind of bring them together in pursuit of that same objective. So marketing need ops to be able to deliver that consistent experience time after time, and to help gather feedback, because that's going to be useful when it comes to building up reputation. And the other way around, operations need marketing to make sure that all these creative campaigns they've cooked up in this room here are actually practical for these guys to implement on the ground. So they need to kind of work together towards the same thing. It's also worth just touching on insight teams. We're seeing this more and more these days. Data and making sense of that, particularly with larger organizations. And what we're trying to help these guys to do is to find the patterns in the data, because from the patterns you get the stories, and the stories are what you use then to lead your team towards greater success. So those are our three main personas. That brings us to the first of our little benefits we're going to talk about today. So it's about all of these guys kind of working together in harmony. So let's go and have a little look on the platform itself now. First thing that I just want to concentrate on is that we've got everything here in one place. You don't need to go anywhere else. So you've got reviews here, which are where you're going to look at your public reputation, what people are saying about you online. Feedback, which is where you've got private conversations really between you and your guests after they've visited. And then you've got audits, which are the detailed objective reports that are completed by mystery guests.
Sorry, Steve, to interrupt you. Just on the audits,
right.
Those parameters are set by the customer, I presume, that when you're setting up the audits, or how you measure that. I'm not sure if you'll cover it later, but is that something that I would, if I was an operator of a multi-site business, I would set those objectives with you?
Exactly, yeah. So we'll cover a sort of framework for how that works. And similarly with feedback, you're asking the questions that you want to ask your guests directly. Obviously, reviews, you don't have that same sort of control over. It's just whatever people put online. But yeah, I guess you could say whatever you pick up through feedback, you can reinforce through audits and reinforce those practices that you want to see happening. And that helps then to drive up the reviews that you're getting, or the standard of those reviews. So you can see already how this is sort of bringing together marketing and operations towards the same objectives. There's also something there for kitchen teams. Let's not forget them. So there's a section dedicated to dish ratings. You've got in NPS, we're looking at how we are examining those things that make people loyal. In sentiment, we're using AI to extract meaning and opinions from text. Then you've got things like KPIs and tasks, and you've got things like leaderboards. Nobody likes to be at the bottom of the leaderboard. Key messages, basically everything is in one place there. So the first place we're going to look then is in the inbox. Let's just go over that. It's basically where everything new lands. And we want to look at managing public reputation. I should say, by the way, I'm using a dummy client here. So this is a load of data that's kind of mashed up to make it not specific to any, but that'll allow us to play around a little bit. But yeah, so you can see all the different visit types that are in here. If we look at a typical example, let's take this one here, for example. And with managing public reputation, we want to help you to get more reviews in the first place, but also to increase ratings. And where people have done this from scratch, it's all about your response strategy, but we've seen an increase of over 50% in the number of reviews that you get, but also 1/4 of a star in the ratings. So if you think about that, if you're sitting at sort of 3.9 or something like that on your Google rating, you want to get up to 4.2, which is where you start to get noticed. This is one way that you can do it. So we'll have these little templates in here. We can see somebody here has had a lovely Sunday roast. Fantastic. we want to kind of respond to that. So these templates, I've just used a generic one here, but you can put your own tone of voice in these. You can have your own templates. And we do actually have one client that fills this up with lots and lots of emojis, which kind of suits their brand really well.
That would definitely be me.
I know my kids tell me that emojis are for old people, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Now I don't want to say that now.
But the idea is that you're engaging with your guests, and Google sees that, you're learning from it at the same time. So that's managing public reputation. Now, if you look at the text that we've got here, we'll be able to use sentiment analysis to pick up a lot of stuff on that. We'll come back to that later. But nothing beats actually capturing structured feedback from your guests. Your guests are ready to share information with you. So we just look at an example site. I've picked on Las Iguanas, but when people have made that decision to give you some feedback, you've got them for about 3 or 4 minutes. And a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking, well, I'm just going to ask them a recommend question, and that's all I've got time for. No, you've actually got a bit more time than that. So from this,
sorry, Stephen, you know that years of experience, I guess, that you know the dwell time once you've got someone said, right, I've decided to tell you what I think. You're from experience, you know that they're going to hang around a bit longer. Yeah,
exactly. And if you've made that effort, you think, well, I might as well just kind of answer a few questions here. So to take advantage of that, let's populate as much as we can. So we know where you've been, we know when you went, we know what sort of experience you had. We'll pick that up from the CRM, that will pump it into the survey. And then design the questionnaires. What you were saying earlier on, Chris, about asking the things that are important to you. So by all means, ask a recommend question, but find out what most influenced that recommend question. What was in people's minds when they did that? If you're Las Iguanas, you're probably interested in what cocktails are really important to your brand. So let's rate specific cocktails and so on. So the idea is to turn this more into a conversation that you're having with your guests. Now we're looking at this on desktop. Hope you like the picture of the beach, and that's making you think of summer holidays already. But most commonly you see that this happens on mobile. The key thing is to make it feel like you're talking to the brand. And then what you're doing is kind of pushing that into the hub, which we're going to go back to now. Let's just go back into here. So let's have a look. So we've got one up here. Here's an example that's come in. So we've got a little bit of feedback that's come in from this particular guest. We can see what's happened. We've got some information about gluten-free, etc. here. So you've got that information, but you then might have you'll come across somewhere you want to kind of have a conversation with them afterwards. I'm just going to pick on somewhere that's happened. So you can see we've got a bit of a kind of workflow here where you can go through where people have left their details. You can kind of follow it up and respond to them. So this particular example, it's actually a pleasant one. It's more commonly used for complaints, to be honest. But this one looks like the server was delightful, funny, and helpful. Looks like she's actually managed to sell a bottle of wine, even though these guys were trying to have dry January. So let's have a conversation about that. Let's say that's great. Really pleased to see you. It extends that brand experience, and you're more memorable in their minds. But let's imagine this was a negative one. We can see a few that are coming up in red down here. Just respond appropriately, and you've got a chance then to turn these guys who could be assassins for your brands into brand advocates. You can even take advantage of a little integration we've got with our friends at Toggle, so you could send them a Toggle gift card if that was appropriate. So there we go.
And so everything has to be a negative, right, for the gift voucher. If it's a positive, you can do the same, right?
Yeah, exactly. So pleased to see you. Come and have a beer on us, or whatever's appropriate for that. So everything we've looked at so far is kind of after the event. It's the visits happened and we're kind of responding to it. But what we want to do is make sure that we're nailing down those steps of service first off, really making sure that we've really thought about how we're going to do that. So that's where we can turn to this framework that we've got here. A lot of clients have their own frameworks. We just put this here for people who want a place to start, really. So this is breaking down all the key parts of the guest experience into the main parts, sort of people, process, product, place. And what you're looking for is to think, well, let's take welcome, for example. What does welcome mean in the context of our brand promise? What does that mean? If you're let's say you're a group of Thai restaurants, for example, do you want to welcome people in a particular way? Is there something that you should say? Is there a gesture that you should make? Whatever it is, define what that is, and then we'll measure it, and we'll do the same for all of that experience. Yeah, so here's an example, visit reports, where we've captured some photos as well. We've got a bit of an overview of this one. We can put all sorts of things at the top. It's all configurable, but in this particular case, you're comparing with averages. You've got this block of text here, which if you don't have time to read the whole report, that's going to give you a good sense. If I just quickly kind of scroll up and down, you can see there's a lot of detail that's in that report there, and you can kind of group things up by sections. You can see all of these individual questions in here. With these bits in blue are kind of text comments, but my eye's drawn to this bit here. Look, where we've got a bit of a block of text where cleaning clearly wasn't quite what it could be. It wasn't bad, but there are some things that we can perhaps learn from that. Some sort of debris on the floor, etc., etc. Then maybe we should do something about that. It's not all about just reading reports. Let's do something about it. So let's go and create a new task. Just because this is a test, I'm going to put a test in here. But you can then decide what you're going to do with that, who you're going to assign it to, how you're going to categorize it and prioritize it, give it a due date, so that someone's actually going to follow up on it and make sure it's happened, add comments, attachments, and so on. So you've got a little workflow there through to make sure you're actioning what's come up in the reports. So I'm going to whet your appetite now with some pictures. So why don't we look at things through their eyes? In fact, I'm going to make this even worse. Look at this. We'll look at the whole gallery of pictures here that's come through from reports. So these can be filtered in the same kind of way. So I don't know about you, but my eye's drawn to this one. But these are really useful if you want to see how things are appearing. Is this, for example, how breakfast should be appearing, for example? And it's not just about seeing it through their eyes, so you can hear through their ears as well. So if we're recording telephone conversations, for example, which we can do, then that can be used to assess how you're selling your package for events or bookings or Christmas or whatever. So everything that we've done so far, this is all at the level of an individual visit. Everything else we'll look at is about kind of combining that all together. So the next thing is about benchmarking your KPIs. So you'll see in all of these areas here, we've got two main types of reports. So we've got sort of overview reports, we've got heat maps. I'm going to come back to the heat maps. We're going to look at an example of an overview report. I'm going to pick on audits just because there's a couple of things I want to show you in here. Sample size naturally is going to be a bit lower than for the others. But the first thing, if we start on the top left here, is that we have got a score. Okay, so we've got a score of 83.5. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't really know. One way to answer that question is that you can compare yourself with others. So if I'm a GM, I might want to compare myself with my area or maybe my segment, which are kind of venues that are very similar to mine, but maybe not in my area. So I'm just going to simulate this. I'm looking at everybody at the moment, but if we pick an area, for example, I can compare myself with my brand. And you can see that I'm slightly behind. So I've got that all to go for. I want to turn this green. I want to be above the rest of the brand. So that's really useful to know. Next thing we can do on that, though, is that we can see how we're trending. So actually, we were following, if we look at the month trend here, we were following the brand quite closely. But something's gone off the boil here in February. So maybe we can examine what that was, how we can get ourselves back up there. But you can vary these. So you might want to look at day of the week, for example. So particularly if you're looking at feedback, you might see a particular pattern emerging there. In this case, we can see that Wednesday we're performing particularly better. The next thing is to say, well, okay, this is great, but I want to get better. I want to do more. I'm not good enough. So let's scroll down a little bit. This is where we put all the opportunities. And what we're looking at the moment is my worst performing questions. So naturally, if I can get those up, if I can move those up a little bit, I'm going to do better. But some questions are going to be easier to achieve than others. So we often find with things like upselling, for example, that you tend to get lower scores. They are harder to get. But we're comparing again here with the rest of the estate. So those that are green, I'm actually doing better than the rest of the estate. Those that aren't, we've got things like a check back, second drinks, those sorts of things are coming up here. We can do better at that. So armed with that information, you might want to then, let's just filter these. We can filter the comments that are over on the right-hand side, get some sort of context as to what was happening with those. But some questions as well are more important than others. So you can see the fireplace here is not a very good performing question. But how important is that? Is it as important as the check back? So we weight these questions. If I just go to points lost, actually there's a pattern that comes out here. So I've really got a big opportunity on this check back. And there's a couple of things that look like they feed off the back of that, because I'm not doing particularly well at selling specials or getting second drinks or any of those kind of things. If I nail that one thing, not only can I improve my performance, it's not all about the visit score, but it's also about getting more sales in. And that's why we must never lose sight of the fact that this is all about driving up sales.
Yeah, so it's the oxygen, right? The revenue side of it is what keeps you going. And I guess experience is important, but obviously the output is sales.
And I'm just going to briefly touch on bonus. I don't have it in this particular sample, but some of our clients will tag certain questions as qualifying for bonus. So what we can do here is to look at those questions that are most commonly causing you to lose out on bonus. And if there's one thing that is going to motivate your teams, it is making sure that they get bonus.
For sure.
Nate, just briefly, you can also look at drilling down to individual questions and answers. So let's have a look at that little check back question here. We can see how that's performing, a day of week, for example, or by month. But the idea is you can look at individual questions and see how they're performing. So if you've got a focus for this year or this quarter, you've got something that you can use to kind of track how you're performing. So I'm aware, Chris, that I've covered quite a lot of stuff there, and you're probably thinking, how am I going to remember all of that? So we don't want you going off to some sort of knowledge base and trying to kind of work out what you need to filter for or whatever. So we add these little page tips on the page, so you don't need to leave the page. Just click that. So what I've just gone through with you: how am I doing? How we're trending? How can I do better? How can I export comments or see what guests are saying? It's kind of all here. And you can then help yourself if it's the first time that you've done that. Yeah, we've got a couple of extra metrics in there, things like response rate and how quickly you respond and so on. But the next area I'm going to go on to is NPS. NPS is one of those metrics that is widely used, particularly in the UK. If we get people that have used American software before, they quite often come over and ask about things like OSAT, overall satisfaction, and top box. So we can support all those things as well. We've got measures for those, but NPS really in the UK is what we see most commonly. So I just wanted to show you one feature. You see this in reviews as well here. You can start to break things down. So we want to see what the split is by detractors, neutrals, promoters. We can see that by day, or you might want to look at particular locations, for example. So it helps you, again, this area is kind of helping you to work out what to focus on. So you might have certain locations that need more attention than others, and that allows you then to do that. So yeah, so lots of NPS analysis. You can really get kind of intimate with their views if you start kind of filtering all these comments.
And another great visual, right? Another great visual there for a meeting or for an area meeting, sitting there with just from a snapshot looking at the area. It's a fantastic point of view. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you could group that up by area as well. So I mentioned earlier on there's another persona that we look at. So insight teams love a heat map. There's loads that you can do with heat maps. So we've made this a sort of data analyst dream, but we've tried to make it really easy to use for ordinary users. So I'm just going to look at one example here. You can see there's a whole suite of different ones, but As the name suggests, you're looking for the hotter colours. So the reds, the oranges, that's where I need to put my attention. So we can see certain locations here performing not as well as others. So let's see if we can find out why. But then, without going off onto other reports, we want to start breaking that down. So in this particular case, I'm just going to take that headline figure, split it out by month, so I can start to see if there's a bit of a pattern emerging here. We can see that this one that was quite orange is actually getting better. So we've got a good trend on that one. Others a little bit more choppy, and some are quite consistent as you go across there. You could also say maybe collapse that up and look at it by area, where you very quickly see that we're moving to a much greener state of affairs over the last few months. So things are getting better. But you get the idea. You can add sort of drill down options and add extra rows in there if you want to. But it's just about cutting it in all sorts of different ways, depending on whatever you want to examine.
No, I think relevance of data has always been important, right? As a working my way up from obviously a waiter all the way up to the board through my career, sometimes you get sent information or you're given information that isn't relevant to you, or you find it hard to digest. I think this allows you to almost consume what you want, in terms of what you can handle and what's relevant.
Yeah, exactly. You know what we find is people have their sort of favorite pages, their go-to pages. And that drives a lot of what they do. Just before we leave MPS, so you can also get maps on breakdown of promoters and detractors. You can look at which questions are most heavily influencing your NPS. You can look at demographics, which I've just got one I made for you earlier, actually. So looking at this, for example, we can look at the impact of demographics. So I've picked occasion because I thought that might be quite interesting. So we've got various occasions why you might come. These are just tags that we can put onto your feedback survey. And I've chosen age as the thing to contrast that against, but I could pick any of those in there. So a couple of things interesting emerging from this. I can see that business meetings is actually one of my most successful occasions. So are we making the most of that? Are we promoting that in an effective way? Looks like these 25 to 34-year-olds, they love a business meeting. Makes them feel important. But actually they're not having such a great time when it comes to date nights. So maybe we could help them out there in that respect. So that's how we can examine demographics. And then you can also look at things like dish ordered. So the dish that I ordered has quite a big influence over the NPS for the whole visit. So you can use that to work out which your winners and losers are. You can look at all sorts of other metrics, things like portion size, presentation, taste, temperature, etc. And things like value. So if I just click on value, I haven't got any text for value here, but if we look at a league table of dishes for value, you could use that to ask questions like, for example, are there things that we should drop? Or do we need to do things to make these feel like better value? Or the things that are at the bottom here that are all green, could we increase the price on that? So it helps you with some of those sort of strategic decisions as well. So now, all of this we've been looking at so far has been about structured feedback. But if you wanted to look at picking things out from text, the text that people have left, that's where we use sentiment. And so for a sentiment analysis, what we're doing is putting all of the text that we've got here from reviews and surveys and audits, stick that into a sentiment engine and find out what people are talking about. So the things that I can tell you most people talk about are food, staff, service, etc. They're the most common things that people have an opinion on. But you can also see what words people are using to describe them. Now, I'm interested in what people are saying negatively about service, because then I can do something about that. So if I select that, I can see the most common reason why people are not happy with service is to do with speed. So that's really useful. I can do something with that information. And if I just filter that again, you can then see comments that sort of bring this to life. You can go through this with the team, like you were saying earlier. You can kind of sit down with the team and say, right, okay, what can we learn from this? What can we do differently?
Yeah, and look at, day part and look at when it's happening, and which you then help you to attribute why, which is half the problem in operations, finding out the why.
Yeah, it is. Is it a day part? Is it a dish? Is it a particular location? On the subject of filtering, so I've just been filtering these comments. You can also, by the way, just add other filters at the top. So if you're interested in day parts, you mentioned there, or day of the week, for example, or maybe certain questions, you can just add those along. We don't put them all in just so it's not cluttered, but you could say, well, what's happening on Saturdays or particular times of day, for example. You can filter those comments as well. So let's say you've got all the information that you're interested in. You can then export that if you want to. And this is most commonly done with heat maps, as you'd expect. Our data analysts there love to export and maybe put things in their own format or do their own analysis or align it with sales data, for example. But yeah, you can also do that with the underlying data behind all of these charts here. And then in the same vein, we'll just go off and look at an example of a report where you can build your own reports. So you want it your own way, that's absolutely fine. So we'll have a kind of starter report here where we've populated certain columns, which you can remove if you want, or you can add additional columns in. So if I'm interested in adding a few sample sizes in there, for example, put those in, you can export that. Maybe we also want to kind of break it down by month, by location, but you have it your way. That's there for you to take. And then you might notice a little one called barometer up here. I'm just going to explain what that is. I'm going to take us back to where we started, so we can go full circle onto this example dashboard page. Now the barometer is a sort of catch-all measure. It's like sometimes people say to us, can you just give me one metric that sort of combines everything? So this pulls together reviews, NPS, audits, give you a sort of overall score. And if you've got a few people that think they're a little bit clever and they think they can game the reviews, get all their mates to kind of put a load of reviews on, it's getting a little bit harder to do that now. But you know, in this case, you have to be good at everything. You've got to be getting good results through all of these other things as well. So yeah, so quite a few of our customers will use a barometer as a sort of catch-all metric, and they use that to compare sites against each other. So sometimes people call them different names, so you can call it whatever you want. It's just a name that we picked and it kind of stuck really. But yeah, that's a catch-all. So just one last thing I wanted to show to you. So a little image I'll get up on the screen here. So we don't operate in a bubble. It's really important, and I guess it is tech on toast. We've got to look at the other tech that you can integrate with.
Brothers and sisters.
Yeah. So so probably most commonly it's CRM systems. This is where your single guest view should sit, and where you want kind of all that information coming in and out of. So you will have information coming in from bookings, from Wi-Fi. It's often where we pick up the feedback invites that come in from CRM, but we can also pass back information. So if you know, for example, that people have had a good time or a bad time, you can use that for segmenting your marketing campaigns. We can look up dish data in EPOS, for example, or we can embed feedback surveys into your app, so it makes it feel a part of that customer journey. We can trigger the sending of vouchers and gift cards, so you might use vouchers and incentives, gift cards maybe as guest recovery if things haven't gone so well. We can integrate with email and reviews for responses. If you're not using our tasks part of the system, we can feed into a help desk like Zendesk or Freshdesk or something like that. And also, of course, you've got export to analytics. A lot of our clients have their own analytics database now, where you can then kind of combine our data with sales data and so on. So that's kind of some of the common integrations that we get. And the last point I'll leave you with, just going to go back to the website where we were earlier on and have a look at case studies. So if you want to get inspiration from what other people have done, you've got some of our lovely clients here that have given us a nice little case study that will give you some ideas as to what you might be able to do for yourself. So that's our platform. I hope that's been useful.
Look, brilliant. I mean, I've known, as I mentioned at the start, I've known the product for a long time, but how it's moved on is insane, right? And if they are interested and they want to reach out and find out a little bit more, can we put them in touch with you, or is there a way to get hold of you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is just the usual way. So go to the website. There's a contact us page there, so you can look us up there, send us a few details, or just get straight in touch.
For everyone watching, that was Stephen Pike. That was HGEM, and you can find these guys on the marketplace. If you just go on the front page of our website and type in guest experience or HGEM, they'll pop up, and you can also contact them there too. Thanks very much, Steve, and we hope to see you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris.